Hey everyone, Mr. Mack here. In this week's lesson, we are going to be looking at step number 3 with our snare drum pad, and this will be under pages 10 and 11 in our percussion book. In step number 3, we are going to be focusing on two very distinct rhythms that we need to learn. And up until this point, we have covered quarter notes, half notes, quarter note rest, and half note rest. So what we can do is if we go back to the beginning of the book and we check out the page number that says X, I, and V, right here, XIV, it'll take us to a page that says binary note ratio chart and binary rest ratio chart. This is just a breakdown of how all of the notes are divided into a beat for us when we hear it, given a piece of music. So, for example, in this top column here, we have our note ratio chart, and we've learned about our quarter notes, which have a black note head with a stem on them. And we also know of our half notes, which has two quarter notes inside of them. So the next piece to this puzzle that we are going to focus on is the whole note. And the whole note is going to have all four of those quarter notes inside of it, so it has four full beats. It could also have two half notes inside of it because our half notes have two beats apiece in them, which still equals 4. So everything still equals to 4 in this case. When we look at our resting chart here, we have a whole rest, and it's very tiny. You can sort of see it, but on your book it'll probably be easier to see. But you will notice that the whole rest is a little black rectangle, and it has these like a thin line that goes over the top of that bar. And if we look at the half rest, that thin little line is on the bottom side of the black bar. All right. So now I'm going to go back to step number 3, which is over on page 10. So we have learned that the quarter note and the half notes have values that are equal to 1 quarter note. In our case, our half notes are equal to 2 quarter notes. And now we're going to add an even bigger note. The whole note is an open note head, and it does not have a stem on it. It receives an entire 4 counts, and since you are just beginning to learn how to play the drums, you have no way of sustaining a long tone. And what he means by that, our author is saying that when we have a note that is sustained, that means that it rings or it lasts for a long time. In this case, we have to use a roll. When we roll and we play percussion instruments, you're probably familiar with a buzz roll on a snare drum. It sounds like this. Right, so when we hear a buzz roll, that is the way that we sustain our sounds on our instrument for percussion. We don't have long tones like wind players or brass players, and when it comes to singing, we're not singing when we play either. But to give you a good example of what a sustain would sound like, I'm going to turn my metronome on real quick. So if I heard my metronome and I had 4 beats in each measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I wanted to sustain a note, and I'm going to use the word or syllable la, it would sound like this. La. So I have a sustaining sound for 4 full beats. La. Now when we are playing percussion, again, we don't have a way of sustaining other than using a roll, which we have not learned about yet or how to do that. And a roll is a very technical side of what we play, and we will get to that later this semester. And it sounds like this. can hear how I'm sustaining a roll for 4 full counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Okay? But what we're going to do instead is we are going to strike the pad and we are going to wait 4 full counts before we move on to the next measure when we play. So in this example on page 10, we have example number 1. You can see we have 2 quarter notes, which count for 2 full beats. We have a half note, and we'll see a dash that's up here, which means that the dash is connecting that 4th beat that's in there, and that's all inside the half note. So all of the notes here are still going to add up to 4, because our time signature tells us there should be 4 fourth notes, or 4 quarter note beats in this measure. If we move to the second measure, you'll notice we have a whole note. Again, a whole note is an open note head, does not have a stem. This will count for 4 full beats, 1-2-3-4, so that one whole note will cover up the entirety of this measure. So let's hear what it sounds like if we were to clap and count the rhythm, including our whole notes. Now keep in mind again that our half notes and our whole notes do not have a sustain when we are clapping, meaning that we don't have the ability to let the note ring for a long period of time with our percussion instruments right now. So it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You may have noticed that when I count, I do try to extend how long the number sounds by using my voice and creating sustain with my voice to help me understand when I'm supposed to have a half rest or a half note or a whole rest or a whole note. So what I would like for you to do on your own today for your assignment is I want you to go through with your pencil and I want you to correctly write in the counts for example number 2, example number 4, and example number 5. I also want you to notice that when we have a rest, we have to make sure that the rest looks appropriate based on the number of counts in each measure. For example, in number 2, I would write the number 1 on top, -2, -3, -4, because I have a whole note that's going to last 3 full beats. In the second measure, I'm going to write the number 1. On the number 2 and number 3 spots, we have a half note rest. Remember that a half note rest is going to equal to 2 full beats of rest. So I'll write the number 2 -3, and I'm going to surround those numbers with parentheses. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this bottom part of the bar here for my half note rest is going to have a thin line on the bottom to make sure that I know, hey, this is a half note rest. It only counts for 2 full beats. Then I'll fill in the rest of that measure. It equals to 4. Next measure, 1-2, because I have a half note which lasts for 2 full beats. I'm going to write the number 3, number 4, number 1 in parentheses, 2, and 3 are separate because we have 2 separate beats, and the number 4 with parentheses. Let's skip down to another example here with number 3. We are in 7/4. That means that there are 7 fourth notes, 7 quarter note beats in each measure. We have beat number 1, 2, 3, 4 is a half note, which means it covers up 4 and beat 5. And then we move on to another quarter note, which would be a new beat. That's beat 6. And finally, beat number 7, we have a quarter note rest. So we put our number 7 in parentheses. If we skip over to the last measure in example number 3, we have the number 1 and number 2 for the first 2 beats. We have the numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6 in parentheses. So that means that those 4 counts are all part of this rest right here. And if we remember correctly, our whole rest has a thin black line on the top of the rest. That's going to tell me that there are 4 full beats in that whole note rest. So that means I've got beat 1, beat 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are silent beats that we still count, and then we come back in and play on beat number 7. So go ahead and write in the counts to examples 2, 4, 5 on your own. And once you're done, read the bottom here where it says common time is referred to as 4/4 and notated using this symbol here. Okay, so in our music sometimes we will see, instead of the composer, the person who wrote the piece, writing 4/4 in the time signature, like we have here in examples 1 and 2, what we will oftentimes see is the common time symbol. The easiest way to think about this is that most music that we hear in our Apple iTunes or our podcasts or SoundCloud or YouTube or anything you're listening to music with, most of the music that you hear is commonly in 4/4. It's the most common time signature. Whenever you're listening to your music next time, check and see if you can count to the number 4 before starting over when you feel the beat in a song. Again, that C stands for common time. It is the most common time signature found in most music that we listen to. That's just an extra cool little piece of information that you need to know in case you get a piece of music that has a C in the front of the time signature. Alright, in our next video in a couple days, we will be breaking down page 11. Feel free to read the paragraph on page 11 and try to get started if you'd like to, and I'll have another video explaining and breaking down how we add a dot to our notes and what it does to the amount of beats that we have.